With me today, I have Dr. Shahrzad Jalali, who is a highly respected clinical psychologist and therapist based in Newport Beach, California. With over 2 decades of experience in mental health, Dr. Jalali specializes in trauma, relationships, anxiety, depression, and personal growth. She holds a deep passion for helping individuals and couples navigate life's most challenging moments to discover empowerment and purpose. Known for her compassionate, solution focused approach, she's become a trusted expert in guiding clients towards healing and resilience. Welcome to the show, Dr. Jalali. It's such an honor to have you here on a Sunday morning.
Thank you. The honor is all mine. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So, Dr. Jalali, it'd be fantastic for you to share a bit more about your own personal journey and what led you into the field of clinical psychology.
That's a very good question. People often ask therapists, what made you do this? And the funny part is, I don't think any therapist chooses to do this. I think their journey kind of brings them here because if you can imagine dealing with people's pain and the darkness inside can be very heavy. So I don't think, to tell you the truth, this is a choice. I actually did my doctoral dissertation on narcissistic injuries among a psychology graduate student and its relation to choosing therapy as a field. And my argument was people do this in order to vicariously heal their own wounding because it's a lot easier to, work on somebody else's wounding than to work on your own. As you can imagine, you don't have to become as vulnerable and feel the pain as much. So I guess the answer to that question is my life journey. I almost finished a PhD in linguistics, so this wasn't my chosen field of work actually. And then I went through some, um, I guess what you can refer to as a midlife crisis at the time, and got some, did some work myself, inner work, and then through that process. I think it was just such a special kind of dynamic for me working in my um, on my own wounding. It opened so many doors for me that I decided that I want to partake in this and guide other people in this process because it's so life changing, in all honesty.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it normally does come from personal journeys, and just your own desire to help others to overcome, whatever pain that we ourselves have suffered. So what do you find now the most rewarding about helping individuals to overcome trauma?
It definitely is an honor walking down someone's journey with them. I feel like just the fact that someone welcomes you into their inner world and kind of gives you permission to see their deepest, darkest points of their being is very rewarding in the sense that we usually, when we kind of come across people in our everyday life, as you can imagine, we all wear masks and we kind of just let people in as much as we're comfortable. And it's usually surface level unless, we have a deeper relationship with someone. So for someone to come to you on a professional basis and let you walk through this journey with them, it's very space opening. I'm assuming both for the individual who's receiving the treatment and for us as a practitioner on the other side. You get to bond with someone, obviously on a professional level, on such a deep level that, when you connect with someone that way, it's impossible not to care for them, honestly. So it takes your, I would say, relational dynamics into such a deep layer that it's almost impossible to do that with people on a daily basis. Now, I want to emphasize again, all of this is done in a professional realm, which makes it even more valuable because you take out all the emotions of everyday life of hurting someone's feelings or overstepping boundaries. Not to say those things don't happen in therapy, but you approach them therapeutically, so it takes things to a different level.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And so What's like, could you actually explain the role of the mind-body connection in trauma recovery?
Yes. So at one point, trauma recovery mainly started with people who would come back from war because they would get exposed to such deep layers of trauma. Mostly people came back with a lot of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So we started to work in the field with working with them trying to kind of lessen their pain, their traumatic memories. And in the initial steps of trauma therapy, there was a lot of talk therapy. So what people would do is they would come back, they would sit in front of an individual and talk about this trauma, hoping that talking about it would lessen the pain. What we came to observe after a while was not only it didn't lessen the pain, but it actually increased the trauma because when you're continuously exposing yourself to something unpleasant, you can imagine it just takes you to that space again and you get re traumatized. So then they came to the understanding that the only way you can actually talk about a piece of information and receive relief from it is if the body experiences that dynamic and in a different state. So, not in the state of hyperarousal that you experienced it initially, but in a calm state so that it can remember or rephrase or re narrate this dynamic for itself in a way that's not as threatening. So, then we took it to the next step of actually calming the body when someone narrates a piece of trauma so that they can renegotiate their truth with that piece. Now, this can happen in multiple modalities. Some people actually use medication to calm the body as the client narrates a piece of trauma, but there are a lot of body work techniques, kind of works of Peter Levine, somatic experiencing, EMDR, or brain spotting techniques that you can use to kind of teach the clients how to navigate their own body and calm it down as they kind of go into a traumatic piece of information. So that way they learn to regulate themselves even in the future as they go through stuff in life that's emotionally provoking. It's actually very interesting to kind of delve into it and to realize how much power we have over our psyche through our body because the body is more accessible to us than the psyche is, right?
So true. Yes, absolutely. And it's so good to hear that as well because, the amount of times that so many of us, we start off with talking therapy and, that we still haven't even come to the root of the issue because, the root of the issue is hidden somewhere, deep in our bodies. And so it really does take some, deep inner work in order to release that. And so that's where the mind-body connection does become really, really powerful. So, from your own kind of experiences, what are the early signs of unresolved trauma that people often overlook?
So I would say what we overlook essentially, and I'm not sure if we overlook it, but we don't know how to respond to it. We don't know how to navigate it. Is we respond to phenomena in a way that is beyond what that particular issue may entail. For example, let's say you and I are colleagues and you give me feedback about something, and instead of kind of just taking it all in and maybe taking my truth out of it or applying it to my work, I mean, I can still have emotions about it. No one likes to be criticized, or critiqued for that matter. I take it to the next level by feeling so unsafe around you or feeling so victimized by you. I would probably label you with being aggressive or being unkind. I would, every time I'm in your presence, I would probably have some form of even bodily hyper arousal in the sense that I would feel like I'm getting sweaty or my heart is beating fast. And, I won't be able to work as efficiently as I normally would. So essentially, something happens instead of having a response. that is appropriate to the circumstance, I have a reaction. So now all of that cannot be rooted in this critique that you have given me. So something tells me I am reacting not just to what you told me, but probably what you telling me has triggered for me. And that could be, I don't know, maybe I was criticized at one point a lot and I never dealt with it properly. So our reactiveness, I would say, in just one phrase, is what is a good indication that we have some form of unresolved trauma.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for mentioning that. And I guess like from your own kind of practice, do you see a lot of like addictive behaviors and just I suppose when it comes to behaviors, it is, you see a lot in relationships as well, like the inability to trust as well. And so what like just from kind of your own experience are the like most common kind of symptoms that you actually see?
Yes, that's a good question. So keep in mind, trauma is something that we have experienced. And we have symptoms that causes certain behavior. So you alluded to addiction. I wouldn't say addiction is a symptom of trauma, but it's definitely a behavior that can come across as a result of the symptom, which is kind of unprocessed emotions that are still very raw, right? So on a physical level, we can have many symptoms such as headaches, stomach aches, difficulty sleeping, rapid breathing, sweating, racing hearts, and feeling even shaky to some extent, right? On a mental level, we can have symptoms such as flashbacks, nightmares, trouble concentrating, feeling alone or detached. Kind of like I often hear this from people that I have people around me, but I still feel lonely,
Okay.
losing interest in activities, having a lot of frightening thoughts, like, like a door shuts and you jump, kind of, you take it to the next level in your head. Behaviorally, we can have symptoms like avoiding memories, thoughts, feelings about the traumatic event, changing routines in order to like kind of not engage. Let's say I've had a car accident and now I don't want to drive because getting into a car kind of reenacts that trauma for me. Sometimes people do the opposite. They actually engage in risky or destructive behaviors, as we kind of alluded to with addictions. And then emotionally, obviously, feeling guilty, worried, having a lot of negative thoughts about oneself, the world, other people, lack of trust, exaggerated feelings of blame. So it impacts us, as you can see, on multiple levels.
It is, yeah, amazing. Yeah. And so what actual therapeutic approaches do you find most effective for trauma healing?
There are many, many approaches these days. I think different people have approached it from different dynamics and come up with different modalities. I alluded to a couple when I was speaking earlier. I would say if you're wanting to work on a piece of trauma, not every modality is a good fit for everyone, depending on how you process emotions, depending on where you are in your stages of recovery, depending on what your narrative is around the trauma itself. If it's a one time trauma or if it's something that has happened chronically over the years. But I would say definitely find someone who's, first of all, it would be very helpful to inform yourself about what trauma is and kind of do a little bit of digging and understand your own behavior, your own symptoms, your own thought processes. And after you have educated yourself to some extent, find a trauma informed therapist, ask them about their modality, try it. It may be a wonderful fit, it may not. Try different modalities. When I went through something traumatic in my own life experience, I worked with several different trauma therapists. And throughout the process, I feel like they each help me with a piece of it. And with trauma, it's not like you do some work, it's done, you move on to the next. It has so many different layers that I remember I would work on a piece and I was like, okay, I feel so much relief from this. And then a smell, a memory, kind of, I don't know, even watching a movie would all of a sudden take me back to the core of the trauma experience. And I'd be like, oh my God, it's as if I have done no work on this at all. But
Mm.
obviously, I would come out of it a lot quicker and it would impact me less. And that's how I realized that no, I have been doing work, but trauma work doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. It will never be a perfect. But if done right, you will get to a point that that dynamic is no longer triggering to you in a destructive way. You can remember it with ease and you can still have emotions about it, but the emotions won't overtake you.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And you also mentioned the importance of emotional safety. So, how can somebody create this for themselves during their healing process?
Safety to me is a very big word, and I don't think we kind of bring enough attention to it. We all allude to it, like, do you feel safe and so forth. But safety begins with feeling at peace and ease in your body. I have gotten into the habit of when I enter a room, I look around and I pick a spot to sit that feels more in tuned with how I'm feeling in that moment, right? Like sometimes I feel like, oh, I like to be facing the window to look outside. Maybe I need some grounding by just like looking at a tree in front of me. Sometimes I don't necessarily feel like I have that need. So I position myself differently. And then paying attention to what your body needs. Grounding techniques are, in my opinion, very powerful. Like having both of your feet on the ground sometimes makes you feel like, oh, I am actually not flowing up in the air like I am in my head. I am attached to the ground. Sometimes having a weight blanket on you, these things actually bring the body into a sense of safety. Holding up to a warm cup of a beverage, coffee or something, because you're sensing it in the palm of your hands, and that kind of gives you a sense of calmness. Breathing, your breathing is your anchor to safety, honestly. Learning how to breathe properly and then other people's presence. As humans, I cannot emphasize to what extent being attached to another human brings us, obviously, a human that feels safe and we trust, and brings us into a mode of being that's more conducive with rest and digest.
Mm.
Um, we kind of intuitively do this in the sense that in different cultures, when someone's hurting, you say, "Oh, let me give you a hug, let me hold your hand." So we already know the power of this. We just have to get into the mindset of mindfully exercising safety within our body, positioning ourselves in groups, in places that feel good to us, and saying no to things that are triggering for us, at least until we figure out how to deal with them properly.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Some really fantastic techniques there. And I guess it's all just trying to feel present, trying to feel grounded. And so whatever we can do to just be in that moment, that we are at now would be really beneficial. So how do you actually guide clients who are reluctant to visit the painful experiences of the past or, whatever incidents?
Yes, I would say I like to meet the clients where they're at. So if someone has reluctance regarding going somewhere, I don't push them to go there. The psyche has its own wisdom. When it's ready, it lets you in. To give you an analogy, imagine a child doesn't know how to swim, or an adult for that matter. You're not going to throw them in the water because there's a reason why they're afraid of the water. They don't know how to swim. You teach them how to swim, and once they gain more confidence about their ability to preserve themselves in the water, then they're, kind of ready to take that on. Same is true with our ability in dealing with hardship or tough emotions for that matter. We don't want to go there because we don't have the trust that this won't ruin me or I can deal with it. When you empower the client to kind of tap into their resources, tap into their strengths, to develop their sense of self, to expand their sense of self and to become bigger than the trauma, then you can go, inward and access the trauma. And they're willingly wanting to actually go there because now they have surpassed whatever it is that has happened to them. And, they can kind of digest it piece by piece. As I said, it would never be something neutral. I mean, that's our goal. And sometimes we get there, but in my clinical experience with big pieces of trauma, it never becomes neutral for you. You just learn how to remember it with more ease.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So do you have any practical techniques or exercises that my listeners can use to process any difficult emotions?
I would say definitely do this with a guide. And not that I often tell people I don't claim I can help you because, um, in my opinion, helping someone, it's such a grand gesture. I mean, I have problems in my own life that I struggle with. Who am I to say I can help somebody else with this? But I can guide you because I've kind of done this before and I know how to hold up a light and I know how to provide you with support when you get stuck. And I know how to tell you, turn right, turn left, stop, all of that.
Mm.
Trauma can be very overpowering, especially in the beginning stages when it's raw. So attempting to go at it yourself, I would say, can potentially get you lost in a realm that you don't know how to navigate. And even, I would go as far to say you may get scared to reapproach it. You may unleash something that you don't know how to navigate. This is how psychosis can potentially be born if something is done without the proper support and guidance. So I would say approach it with educating yourself, approach it with attaining a guide to help you in the process. Once you learn how to navigate your inner world, then it becomes easier. You can do it on your own through all sorts of techniques, such as journaling about your thoughts and emotions, active imagination, which is when you try to kind of relate to whatever dynamic is within you. To give you an example, let's say I realize I'm being very lazy and that bothers me about myself. Now, if I am trained in my thought process and I am acquainted with my inner work, then I can start a dialogue with this laziness within me. I can say, well, why are you here? And why do you show up so often? Do you feel like I need you for, and then obviously, you're answering for your own inner dynamics. But when you kind of start a dialogue with them, you'd be surprised what kind of information you can attain from them. Things that you probably know from your unconscious, but you're not accessing necessarily properly. So laziness can potentially be when you do active imagination with it. It's not because you're flawed or, it's a negative behavior. You're probably burned out from something, or you're probably afraid to do something, or you're probably stuck in a negative zone of being. So when you kind of learn how to relate to it and start negotiating with it little by little, you can go fix the problem that is causing the laziness. Because keep in mind, laziness is simply a byproduct of whatever the underlying matter is. But we don't do it that way. We usually just label ourselves and we're uber critical of, our behavior. And then we go into shame with it. What is wrong with me? Why am I like this? Why isn't anybody else like this? And then that cycle of shame starts its own perpetual negative domains that just continue and take us deeper and deeper and deeper.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so just to have an inner dialogue. That's
Absolutely.
fantastic. And so you're also obviously a relationship um, psychologist as well. So how does trauma actually affect relationships, and what can individuals or couples actually do to navigate these challenges?
The way to answer that question is to kind of go back a little bit and explain why we get attracted to each other. I don't think there are any individuals that are born into this world and grow up to be an adult and survive the world without kind of being exposed to some form of trauma in some shape or form, right? Now, when we say trauma, people often think it's some grand thing, like you were stuck in a hurricane, or you got in a bad car accident, or you were held at gunpoint. Those are obviously severe, kind of parts of trauma. But the main trauma that most of us experience is the first 5 years of our life. No matter how great our upbringing is or how amazing our parents are, which, if we want to be realistic about it, most people miss are missing a lot of dynamics that could be helpful. Like you could be with a parent that's suffering from depression. You could have lost your parents at an early age. You could be born in a war zone, for example. So a lot can happen in those first 5 years of our life, and many things impacted, even our birth order, if we have siblings, if we don't. And then as we grow up, all of those things make us into the person that you and I are today, right? So we are born with something. Obviously, we bring our own temperament, our own nature into the world. But then those 5 years really imprint whatever it is that we have brought with ourselves. So then that turns us into the human that we are today. And once we reach an age where now we're ready to kind of pick a partner, we want to somehow find someone that fits well with that emotional dynamic. Now, that could be positive as well as negative. What do I mean by that? Let's say I am very extroverted as a result of all that I have explained. Now, as an extrovert, I am potentially attracted to an introvert. Why? Because they carry something that I lack,
Mm.
right? I am intrigued by that. Nature does that so that because the goal is for all of us to go towards the middle of this spectrum, right? But most of us fall at the extreme ends of it. So we even say this in lay language, opposites attract. So we get attracted to a person so that we can internalize some of what they have that we lack so we can get closer to the middle. And they are attracted to us for the same reason. Now, that's all fine if we do it properly. If I enter in this relational dynamic right now and I realize that the reason why I was attracted to this is because I want to internalize some of that introversion. I need it as a human to do well, to become more well-rounded. But we don't do that in practice. Once we're in the relationship, now we're mad at each other for not having that trait um, or kind of lacking that trait that we're hoping the partner has. For example, I'm extroverted. I go into a party with my partner who's introverted, and I get mad that they're constantly like sitting in the corner or not talking to someone. Instead of helping them internalize some of my extroversion and me internalizing some of their introversion, we start fighting over that which the other lacks, right? And obviously, this perpetuates into other problems. you can imagine as humans, we are so multifaceted. So think about all different aspects of being that two people bring together and they can disagree on or not see eye to eye. Now, this is just the positive aspects of it. I didn't even go into the trauma because depending on our wounding and our trauma, obviously we attract people to kind of compensate for that as well. And within that can be so many layers of disagreement and obviously problematic interactions. However, the very things that cause us to kind of get into discord with someone are the best avenues for us to learn how to relate to them. Because not only we will grow and expand, but our relationships will, kind of expand and become more comfortable and obviously a better place for us to function on a daily basis.
Very true, yeah. And in terms of actually redefining one's identity, how do you actually help clients to actually achieve that after they've experienced some significant trauma?
So, when we do work with clients who have experienced trauma, our goal is for them to redefine their relationship to this trauma. And as a byproduct of that, they're redefining their sense of self with themselves, right? So at one point, this trauma was something that destroyed my life. At this point, I am the victim of this dynamic, right? And you can imagine I'm very helpless and I'm very kind of at the mercy of the world. But then after clinical work, this is something that has happened to me. It has hurt me in this ways. It has helped me gain wisdom in these ways, and it has given me strength in these ways. And by the way, I've survived it. So now I am the survivor of this trauma, which gives me a lot more control, which gives me a lot more power, which gives me a lot more strength. So you can imagine my identity is reshaped as a result of this process.
Interesting. Wow, thank you. And so, what role does self-compassion play in the healing journey, and how can my listeners cultivate it?
I'm so glad you asked that question because I think self compassion is so undermined in our everyday life. We, especially in the Western world, we live in a dynamic that constantly result oriented, and all of us fall short. I mean, there's not a human being that can say, I take everything on and I do it perfectly, right? On a daily basis, I am faced with parts of my being that fail over and over and over and over again. And what is the inner dialogue associated with that? You're bad, you're not good enough, you have failed, you're rejected, no one loves you as a result. We continuously, are kind of bombarded with these messages internally. However, if we learn to replace these messages with more realistic comments like, yes, you didn't do amazing on this part. That is to say, maybe this is not your area of strength. You do great here, but maybe you need some more work here. This is a very different dialogue with, you are flawed or you're bad or you'll never make it and things of that nature. If we learn to practice this on a daily basis, I think all of our lives will significantly change. But society constantly bombards us with, the opposite messages. And I think we've just internalized it very much. And you even see it in little kids, they come back from school and they're like, I'm bad. No one wants to play with me. I'm ugly. That they're receiving so many different messages that you're shocked at how does a child at this age even view themselves in this light, but it's all the comparisons and the messages and obviously, the bullying that happens in the schools and so forth.
Yeah, no, exactly. It is. Yeah. So amazing. So self-compassion is key, and something which we all need to start to integrate into our everyday lives. So yeah, thank you. Tell us about yourself there, Dr. Jalali. You've got some exciting projects ahead of you.
I do. I kind of, speaking of trauma, Um, I've done a lot of inner work in this regard myself. And over the years, I think even prior to experiencing the trauma I did, I had a very restless soul. So I want to say I'm one of those humans that have always searched for that next remedy that can help you kind of, feel better or find some ease and peace with yourself. And over the years, I've done anything you can imagine from books to seminars to different gurus to different meditation classes, and you name it, I've done it in this regard. And a lot of them have been helpful, and I think each of them have helped me with a different aspect of my being. Well, one thing that I always kind of find intriguing was in self-help books or in psychological books, there's a lot of whatchamacallit, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of, I want to say, academic information regarding how to self-soothe, how to do this, how to do that. And when you're reading it, it's very helpful. You can apply it to your life. But when you're reading a book, you need to relate it to your mental space in order to really get what you want from it, if that makes sense. So I made an attempt to write a book that tells a story of a person who's struggling with trauma. And at the end of each chapter, I pause and I explain the psychological dynamic that the person is struggling with and how to address it, because I feel like this can help an individual potentially connect with that information more deeply and apply it to themselves in a way that's more meaningful. So that's the project I'm currently working with. The book should come out sometime this July, and I'm very excited. I hope people can find it helpful.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. And yeah, it sounds like a very exciting book full of knowledge and wisdom, especially after today's deep dive into the work that you do and, how to heal from trauma. I've really enjoyed talking with you, Dr. Jalali. So, how can my listeners find you?
I have some social media out there that I'm starting to put on a lot of information about self-regulation and healing, and kind of introduce the type of work that I do, which is more depth-oriented and working with the unconscious, as well as connecting it to the body. So they can find me on Instagram, they can find me on TikTok, Facebook, and the websites that I have regarding our practice. So I'll be more than glad to provide you with all that information so you can share it with your listeners.
Amazing, I shall do. And what is one key message you'd like my listeners to take away from today's show?
You are not a victim of your life story. Whatever has happened to you is simply something that has happened, and you're bigger than that if you have survived it. So if you're struggling with something, you don't have to struggle. There are ways to get out of this. There's so many different people out there who can help you take control of your journey, take control of your destiny, and try to digest whatever dynamic that your life has handed to you and rise above it. There's a completely different world for you on the other side of that experience.
Beautiful. What a fantastic end to the show. Thank you so much, Dr. Jalali. It's such an inspiring conversation today. I really enjoyed having you.
I enjoyed being here. Thank you so much for having me.
And that's all we have time for today, my beautiful people. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions about Dr. Jalil's work or about any of the topics that we discussed today, please do not hesitate to reach out. We always love to hear from you. And until the next episode, stay blessed, my friends, and take care.